Today, we will be testing out Elden Ring on the ROG Ally X. You know the drill. We're gonna go through all the settings from low, medium, high, ultra, test out a couple different variants of resolution, but that's it. This should be pretty straightforward, but I'm pretty excited to put this through its paces with the game that is ranked #1 on the most played games on the Steam Deck right now, which I would assume would translate a lot of people are going to want to play this on the ROG Ally X with the hopes of better performance. We'll start things at 1080p, medium settings. All right, let's jump in. We're starting off nice and strong with 50 frames per second, but immediately drop into the mid 40s. But this is at medium settings at 1080p. Mind you, we are at the maxed out, plugged into power, 30 watt manual, everything's cranked to the max. But this is looking phenomenal. To even have the option, like if you're at home and you can plug in, or if you have a nice battery with, 65 watts or more power through, you can plug this in even when you're on the go and get this kind of performance. This is where the Ally X is definitely shining. So you're getting 45 frames per second at 1080p, medium settings. Looking so good. What a life we're living. Okay, I got a little hasty there. I'm gonna bump down to low settings now. I just really wanted to see what that would look like at medium. Let's see if it can maintain, closer to 50 and less of the, lower 40s. I mean, already we're staying in the 50s to low 50s. With quite a bit going on the screen, it dipped down to 45. But I'm not complaining. That's pretty good. Yeah, low settings, 1080p, we're getting so close to 60 frames per second, which is very impressive. I'm sure in some areas when you're like inside or something, this would be pulling pretty easy. The fans start kicking on, but they're not bad. Even when we're cranking this system, this is the worst case scenario in terms of, power draw and those fans kicking on, and they're not very loud at all. So it's definitely a playable situation wherever you are, even when it's plugged in and just maxing out the 30 watt TDP and just getting the best performance possible. Which, look at that, we're so close to 60 frames per second. It would have been so cool to have this game play at that. Okay, hopefully this guy doesn't kill me. Now we're gonna jump in and change things to high setting. We did medium, now we just did low. Now let's jump into high setting. This is pretty impressive still, to be able to be at these settings and have 40 frames per second still going on is quite nice. This is definitely playable. A good case study here is being able to plug into a larger external monitor and enjoy a 1080p output at over 40 frames per second. And this is on a handheld device. Like when you dock this bad boy and you can play this at full HD at these settings, that's pretty great. Not bad at all. Maybe I'm becoming a believer. It's interesting to see how some games perform so much better on Linux. They just seem to be more optimized, where other games, they seem to be a little bit better on Windows. Doesn't seem like it goes the other way though. Unless I'm wrong, let me know what games maybe work better on Windows, not on Linux. I mean, obviously some games just don't even work on Linux. That's the true issue here. But this is looking awesome. We're gonna jump in here, change the settings from high to maximum. This will be impressive if we can play this game at maximum settings, 1080p, and have above 30 frames per second. And I don't wanna get too far ahead of ourselves, but so far, we're absolutely getting above 30 frames per second. Way above. We keep dancing in the 40s. But this is actually playing at high 30 frames per second at maximum settings, 1080p. It feels like it's making quite the difference. Being at that 30 watt maximum plugged in power is really shining in this game right now. This honestly makes me think it could be a good idea just to bring a battery bank with me when I'm traveling even, so that I could crank this in and play this game at 40 frames per second, maximum, 1080p, throw on my Viture glasses. Oh boy, this is making the Steam Deck look a little sad, not gonna lie. Just on an airplane, maximum settings, above 30 frames per second. But if you're looking for the best way to enjoy all your games, the Viture PRO XR glasses are the way to go. 1080p, 120 hertz, super bright, and if you buy them, use my code Joshua Gray and you'll get 10% off all the accessories, and I get a kickback, which helps me make more of these types of videos. And now back to our program. Okay, now that we have tested all the settings in 1080p, I'm very interested to see what this is gonna perform like at 900p. And we're gonna go all the way back to low. I'm really hoping to see some 60 frames per second action here at the 900p. Because honestly, this game looks great at 900p. It's pretty hard to tell the difference on that tiny little monitor. It wants to so bad. 56 frames per second. I mean, it looks buttery smooth, but we just can't seem to get it all the way. It wants to. It really wants to. It's just not gonna do it. 55 frames per second, low at the maxed out wattage. Again, not shabby. Not shabby at all. It'll be interesting and telling if going from 900 to 720p is gonna net us that 60 frames per second, because this is so close that I would be surprised when we jump to 720 that this isn't gonna do that. It feels like it should. All right, now it's time to check out medium 900p. This is basically getting the same. 55, you're only losing a couple frames per second and you're getting quite a better image. I guess it dips down to 50 now, where it was staying pretty strong at the mid 50s in low settings. 58 in a simple area. If we look at the sky, we'll get that 60. The tree. Yeah, it seems like we're getting a solid 50 to 55 frames per second here at medium settings. Now we're gonna change things to high. Check out what we can get. Right off the bat, we're losing about 5 frames per second, but we'll see, maybe it'll come back a little bit. Still above 45 frames per second at high, so that's nice. 50 frames per second. 50, 51, like it's kind of just chilling right at that 50 frames per second at 900p. I feel like we were getting pretty close to that at the higher resolution, and the GPU is only at 80%, which makes me believe, yeah, we could probably just jump up the resolution and get very similar if it could utilize more of the GPU. This makes me think that we're gonna see very similar performance when we jump down to, you know, turbo mode at 23 watts or 25 watts, and even maybe performance mode at 17 watts might be pretty close to this. It's time to get crazy. Jumping up to maximum. Here we go. Honestly, if you wanted to play at maximum, playing at 900p is probably the move. We're getting almost a solid 45 frames per second. Maximum settings, 900p. Pretty awesome. When there's a little bit more going on, it's dipping a little bit to the lower 40s, but I haven't seen it jump below 40 yet. Man, again, being able to just plug this bad boy in or dock it, hit it on some external monitor action or your TV in your living room and use this as more of a console experience. Not bad. Other than that, the software is absolutely not a console experience. But when it's plugged in and you got power, this is pretty nice. Okay, that was everything at 900p. Now it's time to go to 720p. This seems like a little bit weird to be cranking the wattage and then dumping the resolution so low. But hey, let's see what happens. We were hoping this would give us that 60 frames per second, but it looks like we're not gonna get that. It can't push enough to the GPU. There's something else bottlenecking it, where lowering the resolution is not netting us very much. Oh, we're so close though. I'm sure there's ways to like fine tune and tweak some of the like where the power is going. Oh, I wasn't paying attention. And look, now we're hitting 60 frames per second. If there was just a way to push a little bit more to the GPU, we could definitely be seeing a solid 60 frames per second here. Inside these little areas, you know, you'll see 60 every once in a while. But it doesn't look like we're getting much better performance at 720p, because look at that GPU, 69% utilized. Like, it's just not pushing enough to it. So hypothetically, we're just, you know, increasing the resolution and the GPU just kind of takes over. But something we can do is change the quality settings from low to medium, and then we'll keep going from there. But let's see if we can get basically the same frame rates, but at higher quality, which seems to be the case right now. Medium is pulling about exactly the same frame rate, maybe 1 or 2 less from low settings. So it definitely doesn't seem worth playing at low. I don't know why you would. I guess now that there's more going on, we're dipping into the 40s. So I suppose it was handling low a bit better. But at medium, getting this, you know, high 40s to 50 frames per second, mid 50s every once in a while is pretty nice. Switching things up from medium to high. Let's see if it can still hang in the 50s. I want to speak too soon, but we're right there at 50, 51, 57. What just happened? 56. It's gonna get crazy over here. I mean, this is playing better. What the heck just happened? Yeah, it's staying above 50 for sure, which is, well, okay, 45. That's pretty impressive. Sometimes it feels like it enjoys being pushed more, and it'll play like higher frame rates, but then it'll dip to lower frame rates. It can't like sustain itself. 60 frames a second, just for a second there. Time to go all the way to maximum settings. That dude just tried to eat me alive. 720p maximum settings, we're still staying above 50 frames per second. It just, at 720p, this little Ally X is saying, hey, this is too easy. Not enough pixels are getting pushed to me. I can push these all day long, what the little X is saying. Again, this is like, doesn't seem the greatest. Like, why would we be playing plugged in 30 watt at 720p? I could see it if it was giving us like 60 frames per second constant, but it doesn't look like it's gonna get us that. So now we're at turbo 25 watt, not plugged in. We're still at maximum 720p. And yeah, that doesn't seem to be affecting the frame rate too much. This seems to be pretty much what we were getting plugged in at that 30 watt. We're gonna jump into 17 watt performance mode at 900p resolution. CPU boost is off on all of this, by the way. So this is low settings. Let's just double check. 900p, low settings. We're getting a nice 40 frames per second here. Kicking things off nice and strong. Do a little parkour. Why not? No, what did I just do? Wow, I lived. Okay, 40 frames per second. Seemingly no issues here. For a minute there, yeah, like a couple times it's dipping to like 38 frames per second, but you wouldn't really notice that. It would have been nice to see like a 45 frames per second. But yeah, this performance isn't so bad. I need like 2 of these so I can remember side by side. Let's just do like a little comparison. What was 1080p looking like? I just don't remember now. It's so close. It wants to be above 30 frames per second, but it just doesn't seem, it just doesn't have it. Just a little bit more oomph and it would be there. Now let's check out how it does at medium. Again, remember this is the 17 watt performance, 900p. It like jumped. They just ambushed me. 40, 8 high 40s. With like tons of craziness going on. It dipped into the 30s just for a second, but it was pretty consistently high 40s. But yeah, it looks like almost 50 frames per second is what you're gonna be getting at these settings. And it's drawing about 28 watts, but with that 80 watt hour battery in this bad boy, you're not gonna be too worried about it, honestly. It just makes it so much more usable in other case scenarios when you're out and about using this places, to be able to have, you know, more than what it was, which is like a ridiculous hour playing on the Ally. And like the first Steam Deck too was similar in this just like terrible battery life. Now we're gonna jump into high settings. Looking fresh in there. Mid 50s. We come outside, high 40s to mid 50s. What is this guy doing? What's you freaking out about? Yeah, take that. That 47 frames per second in your face just makes everybody easier to kill when you have higher frames per second. Kind of dipped into the 30s there, high 30s, mind you. But yeah, I mean, it'd be cool if you could just like lock this in at 40 frames per second. That'd be so nice. It's really close, but it's definitely not there. But if you wanted to save a little bit more battery, you could just like lock this in at 30 frames per second and have a pretty nice experience here. Okay, now we're gonna go from high to maximum. 900p, 17 watt performance mode. This could be a pretty good sweet spot if you wanna play, you know, at 30 frames per second. Cause as of right now, we're staying at that 30. Oh, it's so close. 29, but I mean, honestly, if you weren't staring at that, you would not notice. It certainly feels like a pretty solid... Dude, this dog is just annihilating me. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely like a 30 frames per second option. Absolutely. It just like jumped to 40 frames per second. If I get the heck out of here. You know, in smaller rooms, obviously, it's gonna play a lot easier. Locking in at maximum settings, 900p at 30 frames per second could really be a good move for a lot of people. All right, now we're gonna test things at 13 watt, 900p, and we're gonna start things off nice and simple, low settings. We're almost getting 50 frames per second. You could lock this in at 45 and enjoy a pretty decent battery life experience, which would not be bad. You could probably almost get 3 hours of Elden Ring if you tweaked it a little bit here. Not so bad. 36, mid 30s to high 30s consistently. So maybe not 45 frames per second. But if you're about that battery life, you're on an airplane, there's nowhere to plug in. Now we're gonna jump in, change to medium settings, see how far we can push that silent mode. I mean, it's always great when it just like jumps up in frames per second. Let's get down here. Get some bad guys in there. Still above 40 this whole time. 33. Now we're only pulling 21 watts. I wonder why now it's 21 watts, 20 watts. I mean, this battery life would be amazing. I mean, we're talking almost 4 hours on a full charge. You could just lock in at 30 frames per second, 900p. Nice. Yeah, it doesn't seem to dip under. I'm sure, you know, somewhere really intensive it would, but at least you have the option. Now we're gonna go to high settings. Can we stay above that 30 frames per second? I doubt it, because we were so close just before. It really wants to. I mean, we're only dipping, okay, now 27. So yeah, no, we have the limits here, folks. I mean, if you're not snobby, this is playable. But if you're a snob, disgraceful. Throw it away. Just to be a little bit crazy, maximum settings on silent mode. Oh no. I wanted to run forward, not jump backwards, but it's doing pretty good. It really wants to hang at that 30 frames per second. I just don't think when we get to somewhere that's more intensive that it's gonna be able to hang there for much longer. I mean, even right now, it's doing pretty good. With some battles going on, this fire effect, there we go, 25 frames per second. It couldn't do it forever. So yeah, maximum doesn't seem to love silent mode. You know, not that I thought it would. Yo, these dudes' fires are no bueno. 26 frames per second. Nice. We're gonna jump back into 1080p. Now that we're at that performance, we're pulling, you know, 30 watts almost. I think we should be able to play at low 1080p. So far, yes. Yes, we can. 40 frames per second. Not bad. Yeah, it seems to, you know, just under 40, low 40s the whole time. 1080p, medium settings, 17 watt performance. No, why the heck are you doing this? Wow. Okay, we're gonna check out the 17 watt performance mode at full HD, medium settings. Right away, we're seeing about mid 40 frames per second. It honestly made a big difference restarting the game. We had a little bit of a glitch there with the screen just resizing randomly, but now we're getting like a 45 frames per second lock-in. Well, I spoke too soon. It's dipping, you know, just to 30, high 30 frames per second and 40s. Now let's jump up to high settings, do a little run around. I mean, this is chilling until it wasn't there. Jump down to the low 30s for a second. Mid 30s, you know, pulling 27 watts. If we run over here, maybe it'll play a little bit better. Look at the ground. You know, you can get some higher frame rates, but in reality, we're looking at a little bit above 30 frames per second play right here. Mid 30s, you know, not bad. Then we'll jump in, check out maximum settings. Here we go. Let's just pray that we stay above that 30 frames per second. So far, but I feel like I always speak too soon. We'll find out. Oh, hey there. Let's just try to summon as many people as we can here. It really wants to stay above 30. Really bad. And it is. This is at maximum. At 17 watt. We're just pulling 27 watts here for a nice long amount of time at 30 frames per second. I mean, again, this is pretty awesome. You know, on the train, on the bus, chilling in bed, too lazy to grab that power cable, lock in at 30 frames per second. Go become an Elden Lord. Make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, give it a thumbs up. Let me know what other games you would like me to test on the ROG Ally X. Should I keep this device? I don't know. This test, you know, made me a little bit more of a believer. It is absolutely crushing at 1080p playing this game, and when you plug it in, then it really shines. We just recently passed 5,000 subscribers. Pew, 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 pew. Thanks everybody so much, but now we are on the march to 10,000. So make sure to subscribe, hit that thumbs up, leave me a comment with what games we should be testing next on this device or the OLED Steam Deck. Bye!